Hey guys, how's it going? Hope you're doing well. My name is Crown, and today I'm going to read you some very interesting stories that I hope that you're gonna love. And now, without further ado, let's go! I'm a 19-year-old male, born completely deaf and mute. Also, I'm partially blind in my left eye. I live with my sister, 28 female, who has been taking care of me since our parents died. Recently, she got married and went on her honeymoon, so I'm on my own for a few weeks. This happened yesterday. Usually, whenever I got out, I'm accompanied by my sister due to my disability, but now, since she's on her honeymoon, I had to go out alone. There was a new supermarket opened in our area, and I needed some items, so I decided to go there and grab them. My bad for wearing a red-colored shirt almost similar to the employees working there, but if you look closely, you could see that it was not the uniform. I was at the electronics section looking for some batteries when I saw an old man struggling to get some DVDs at the top shelf. Since I'm tall, I helped him, and he thanked me. I can do lip reading. I went on his way. Then I began looking for the batteries, and that's when I felt someone grab my left wrist. I turned around and a woman in her late 40s slapped me. She was speaking, but I couldn't follow her lips as she spoke too fast. However, I was able to catch some words like you, ignore, job, and so on. So I signed to her that I'm deaf. Apparently this was a wrong move because she became more irate towards the signs. Again, she was yelling something, but I couldn't catch anything, so I took my notebook and started writing that I'm deaf and mute. Before I could finish, she grabbed my notebook and pen and threw them away. Then she slapped me again and pushed me to the ground. Luckily, by this time a store employee came to see what the commotion was about. He saw me on the ground and helped me up. Then he asked what happened. Before I can sign to him, Karen starts yelling at the employee. I don't know what she said, that she was not facing me, and after she finishes, I sign to an employee that I cannot hear or speak to. Fortunately, he understood, then explained this to the lady, but she's still not convinced. She tried to assault me again, but I moved away. Then I wrote and showed the employee to call the cops on her. The employee nodded and called the cops. Karen tried to run away, but the security caught her. The police arrived in about 10 minutes. They first talked to the employee, who explained the situation about how Karen assaulted me because she mistook me for a store employee. One police officer comes and speaks to me. I understood that he wanted my version of events, so I wrote everything down and showed it to the officer. Then they went to check the CCTV footage. Then came back and asked me if I wanted to press charges. I gladly said yes. Karen was then placed in handcuffs and given a free ride at the back of a police car. The manager then explained to me that Karen thought I worked there, and she became angry that I ignored her. She had been standing on my left side, so obviously I couldn't see her. The store manager then offered me a 50% discount on the products. I texted my sister about the events that happened, and she was livid. Oh, did I mention that my sister is a lawyer? She told me that she herself will be handling the case. I would see to that Karen will get maximum time. Court date is in around 40 days, and I will update about it after court. This happened about a year ago. I came home from spending a weekend in my girlfriend's to find my condo had been broken into, trashed pretty thoroughly, and about $18,000 worth of camera equipment and electronics stolen. I made a report with the police and they did absolutely nothing. I tried to get in touch with a detective to no avail. Another unit in my condo complex had been also burglared. They took their computer, but more importantly, their car keys and car. My keys were also stolen, but I think since my car is a manual, they elected to take the much more boring automatic car my neighbor had. After a day of trying to get the police to take the matter seriously, at around 10 p.m. that same night, I got a ping. My laptop had been opened and connected to the internet. I looked for the location, and it turns out it's at a hotel about half a mile from my house. So at this point I realize I'm not dealing with criminal masterminds. I write down to the hotel to see if the desk person will tell me which room they are in, since I do have a pretty good idea from where the room is. All except for which floor they are on. They don't, of course, but as I'm leaving I see my neighbor's car just sitting on a street. We call AAA and the police, steal the car back, and tow it to a different location somewhere else in the neighborhood. Since the thieves still have the keys, they could easily just come and steal it again. My neighbor has re-signed to rekey in his car and dealing with that expensive headache, but it's still a win to have the car retrieved. While we were there, I thought it would be a good idea to bring the police with me to the hotel desk person, but without a warrant or backup, they are unwilling to even knock on a door. The next morning, I get up nice and early, call the detective assigned to my case, and he answers. He has just gotten in and my file is on his desk. I tell him what I know and ask if it's a good or bad idea to go to the hotel and wait for them to leave so I can confront them and maybe get some of my stuff back. He says that's a terrible idea, so that's exactly what I do. This forces his hand somewhat and he ends up meeting me at the hotel with his partner. Just as I was introducing myself, three young males walked past the lobby, one of which was wearing my backpack. I say, hey, there goes my backpack. And the detectives detain the young men and find my laptop, my iPad, another laptop still unknown, and a set of keys. Now, I don't know what probable cause really is, but three guys walking out of a hotel room with $3,000 worth of my stolen goods seems like it should be. But no, they knock on the door but don't enter. Sucks, but I have insurance, and that ended up covering it. Now for the revenge part. Only one guy was carrying anything stolen, so he faces a pretty massive receiving stolen property charge and pleads out to a year in jail. Not bad, right? Well, in my victim impact statement, I talk about how I feel unsafe now, how the insurance company had to pay me out and I request restitution for the full amount plus the new security system we have installed on our property. The suspect is staring daggers at me. Apparently, in the interrogation, he was incredibly angry and completely at a loss for how he got caught. I'm happy enough to fill in the courtroom with those details, and I give an interview to a local paper so whenever anyone Googles his fairly distinctive name, all this comes up. I have a protection order against him, and he's scheduled to be released soon, but with my new security system, I don't think I'll be having any problems in the future, and maybe he learned a valuable lesson. Probably not, but the felony on his record should be a nice reminder. Don't break the law, jerk. A few years ago, I was a primary faculty advisor and chair for admissions to a highly competitive health science program at a small public college. While that may sound impressive, it's basically a way of saying I was the lowest on the totem pole. I had all of the responsibility overseeing admissions for this program. In order to try and make the department even stronger, they added a new degree option to that health science program that largely overlapped with existing classes. In fact, the only change they had to make was to add one 8-credit-hour course to make that new degree option. Since I was so low on the totem pole, I had no part in the process of this, but as a loan advisor, I had to learn all of the ins and outs of it so I could advise students and potential applicants. Because of this, I found a problem where the new class was added to the course schedule and added to the college catalog, but it was not officially added to the new major. This would cause trouble for financial aid then, down the road when they apply for graduation. It may seem like a small thing, but if it's not officially required for, major financial aid won't pay for it. I pointed this out to my supervisor who thanked me for catching it and asked me to inquire about how we correct this. So I sent an email to someone, middle management, who might be able to help, asking questions and proposing possible short-term solutions until the curriculum committee could meet to make the changes official. After the email, there was silence for a week, therefore I sent a follow-up email. The next morning I received an email from one of the VBs chewing me out for overstepping my bounds, trying to make changes I didn't have authority to make, and a reminder that they know how to do their jobs, and that I was expected to stay in my lane. This email included my supervisor, multiple deans, 2 department heads, and another VP. Fine. I dropped it. I was already looking for other jobs and ended up leaving the following year. So what do I care about? Fast forward 3 months, we were about 10 days away from this new class starting with the first cohort of 10 students in this new degree, and I started getting phone calls and emails from all over the place. The problem I pointed out still hadn't been fixed. Now the financial aid and registrar's office are dealing with angry students who just found out each will have to pay for an 8-credit class out of pocket. Those departments were reaching out to me asking for help to get this fixed before the VP found out about it. I just forwarded the email I received from the VP with a message that I was instructed to stay out of this and that their bosses were aware that I was not to be involved. It's officially not my problem. And to anyone who might say I could have helped and not screwed over the students, you're right. Unfortunately, there is absolutely nothing I can do at this point. That's why I tried to address it months ago when I could have helped. The proper way to make this happen involves making the proposed changes to a committee, then those changes would have to be approved by the executive board. For various reasons, this could not happen between then and the start of the class. So the VP contacted the state chancellor's office to see what kind of work around the state would approve to get this done now. However, the college was denied any exceptions. In the end, the college ended up having to swallow the cost of this course for all 10 students. I don't remember how much it was, but it was no less than $25,000. So this story is a little out of character for me. For those who saw my post on malicious compliance, I'm the girl who had a teacher think I was faking an asthma attack. In said post, it's pretty clear I'm a timid, non-confrontational person, but this weekend something just snapped, and while I feel bad for the raccoon, it was fine by the way, just spooked, I had never regretted this incident. Context. Here in Canada, we have a program called the Cadet Program. It's for ages 12 to 18, and for many, acts as a gateway into the military. It's not part of the military, it's a civilian organization, but it's structured as close as it can get. This includes having air, army, and sea branches. I was an air cadet. While it introduced kids to the many activities of their respective military branches, no one was forced into it by any means. It also offered a lot of other activities and learning opportunities that would benefit civilian life and life in general, such as effective speaking, leadership, teamwork, and so on. The adults running it had officer ranks, lieutenant, captain, and so on. The cadets had NCO ranks, air cadet, leading air cadet, corporal, flag corporal, sergeant, flight sergeant, warrant officer, second class, I got to hear, whoa, and warrant officer, first class. Any of you wondering how timid non-confrontation people got to higher ranks? It was because I was fairly laid back and made friends with most of the kids there. The you only have to call me by my rank in front of the officers kind of person. And wouldn't you know it, people tend to be more inclined to do things when you're friendly and ask nicely. Context over. Sorry, it was so long. This story takes place 4 years ago when I was 17, during a field training exercise, a camping trip, where senior cadets, sergeant and higher, plus officers would teach survival training. Me, being a flight sergeant at the time of the trip, was in charge of one of the tents and some of the teaching. I was supposed to only teach how to use a radio and snare sitting, but we will get to why I had to do more. In our squadron, we had a few people around my age who were, to put it bluntly, complete jerks. Ignoring our warrant officer, she was a witch, we had a jerk of a flight sergeant, Sergeant Dick, and Corporal Brown Noser. Canadian slang. Dick is faking out or dodging like in hockey, Brown Noser is a suck-up. These three were best buds. Well, the corporal was only there because they could push him around. The poor guy. The flight sergeant was technically higher than me since he was promoted before I was, and loved to rub it in. Since his buddy Sergeant Dick didn't want to do his work and instead just goof off and chat, guess who got stuck doing it instead? On top of radio and snares, I was now also in charge of fire maintenance, shelter building, and SOS, make big notes for pilots setting a big yet controlled fire. Thankfully, I got assigned to a tent with a group of guys I was friends with, all younger than me, by the way. I was the highest rank in the tent, and as such was in charge of it, a cadets in it, I was responsible for their safety. These three cockweasels were put in a tent together with three other young cadets, two of which were new. Throughout the weekend, they continued to dump responsibility, including their own group's tent, 5 to 6 cadets attend, talk down and belittle me and others under the flight sergeant's rank, and be overall cockweasels. And that, along with a lot of pressure and stress going on in my life at the time, caused something to snap. And the last night we were there, I got my chance to act on my newfound craving for revenge. During the weekend, I had expressly forbidden food from being in my tent. As I didn't want an uninvited guest and I was in charge of these kids' safety, I didn't want them to endanger themselves by being stupid. Well, they were stupid. One of them had food in his bag. I didn't find out till I was woken up by one of the sick cadets because there was a raccoon sitting in our tent eating it. Two of them were freaking out cowering in a corner and the other three were staying very still once they woke me up. I took my bag, emptied it of all the clothing I had in it. Backpacks make good pillows when you only have a sleeping bag, and scooped it up, closing the flap and holding it shut. Not a zippered bag. As I left my tent to release it back into the woods, I saw the flight sergeant at his friend's tent, and that craving to get back at them emerged again. I'm not proud of what I did next. I don't regret it, but it was definitely a horribly mean thing to do. I went up to their tent, unzipped the flap a little, shook my bag a punch, and held it up to the opening, letting go of the flap, and ran like hell back to my tent before anyone saw. Cue screaming and people walking up just as I entered my tent again. I tell the kids to stay in the tent while I see what's happening and go out to act like I'm only just responding to whatever happens. As officers and a few other seniors show up, the 6 guys run from their tent. The raccoon pulls out of it with a bag of chips in its mouth and runs off into the woods. The tent was a disaster. Sleeping bags had rips and scratches. Stuff was strewn around the tent, including food, and the guys were shaken and a little scratched up. They got chewed out for being so irresponsible and for agitating the creature. As if you just reacted calmly, it never would have attacked. Their protest fell on deaf ears. No one found out it was me, and incidentally, none of the cadets in my tent reported a raccoon had gotten in, as they didn't want to get chewed out by our CO. I later told them the truth when they asked me during a normal training night once. We had a laugh about it and nothing was ever said to the officers. They were still jerks afterward, but it felt great knowing that I was the cause of their misfortune that night. This happened a few years ago. I received a phone call from an HR person from a staffing agency I almost worked for at one point. That's another funny story for another day. I got through the greetings and small talk and got down to business. HR says, I have a person you know applying for a job with one of our customers. Me, sort of confused. No one gave me a heads up. Who are we talking about? Your friend, Mo. Who? Mo, last name. He said he worked with you at the email company. Oh, okay, I remember him. But I'm not sure why he put my name down. We didn't work all that closely. I interacted with his team only peripherally because we had equipment in his office. I don't really feel comfortable providing a reference. Well, that's sort of our fault. We sort of pressured him to cough up preferences on a fly. Well, I don't feel comfortable providing a reference. Come on, Opie. We know each other. Help me out. Well, not being his manager, I can't discuss his performance. Okay, can I ask you about his technical skills and your comment on those? Fine, ask away. How's Mo's software package number 1? Okay, I guess maybe 2.5 out of 5. 5 out of 5 is extremely rare for this software. I might be 4.7, and I've used the software for 20 plus years, and even flown to the vendor's headquarters to work of technology issues and help design future versions of products with them. HR says, great. How is he with hard work platform number 1? Well, in the time that he was at the email company, he never touched the platform. If he gained knowledge from elsewhere, I cannot comment. Wait. That can't be right. He said he led the hardware platform number 1 refresh project. Well, that's not true. The email company is huge. Is it possible you weren't aware of the project? No, I am very aware of the project, and he wasn't leading it. How can you be so sure? Because I led that project. The HR very uncomfortably. Oh, I think it's best for everyone that we end the call here. I think you have a phone call to make. Yeah, that's probably best. I didn't necessarily bash him, but just set the record straight.
And now we have reached the end of today's stories. Thank you for watching and see you next time.